now. So this task force meeting has been called by Ms. Lucchini, and I appreciate the remainder of you joining today. I know we've had some scheduling conflicts over the last several weeks due to the summer vacation as well as work commitments. So tonight's purpose is to wrap up at the request of Grace, both approving agenda meeting minutes 2 and 3, and then providing an official formal recommendation to the city of Tualatin for the proposed boundary and the proposed boundary projects. So the first item on the agenda is agenda meeting minutes 2. Those have been given to you now several times based on the adjustments that TVF&R had made, as well as Ms. Lucchini.
You probably need a motion.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the meetings from meeting number 2 and number 3.
Second.
All those in favor?
Is there discussion?
There can be.
I have just a couple of additions. Can you, because of the technical difficulties I'm having, are you hearing what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry about that. Under the proposals on the that I have made, and I'm sorry there's no page numbers here, but for proposal number 1, the statewide planning goal for number 5, goal 5, would, as it stated, that also to include and to be identified as one of the first projects to be implemented by the bond measure. Same thing is for the second project for the stormwater management plan. And then that one would be, and to identify as one of the first projects to be implemented by the bond measure, and also how the resulting information integrated into the city's natural resources maps should be assuming.
And that is the changes that you're wishing to make according to your proposals that you presented at meeting number 2, correct, Grace?
No, these were within the proposals I made on the 4/8 meeting. I would just like to have them recorded as within the minutes of the meeting.
Okay, so those will be recorded as Grace Lucchini's suggestions.
In addition to that, there would be under the summary of the Oregon DEQ management code. It also provided for needs for inclusion in local comprehensive plan and consistency and integration into statewide planning goals, including public facilities and services, goals for natural resources and open spaces, water quality, and citizen involvement.
And those comments will be noted that Grace has suggested those changes in the meeting minutes.
I still have a couple more, sorry. And it says that the materials are to be in these, the materials are included in these minutes titled Grace Lucchini submissions, but I don't see them within the minutes.
So Grace, on that one, when I actually have access to the city computer, those will be included in a PDF format as an agenda packet. I just don't have the ability on the Adobe software that I have here.
And I respect that. I understand. I just didn't see where they were, and I just wanted to be assured that they would be included. I appreciate that. Thanks for that information. I also commented after it says Cassandra indicated that the proposed projects, the next paragraph, Grace commented the city council has directed the staff to develop a stormwater plan for the Basalt Creek area, but the city has not yet specified when the development of the stormwater plan would actually begin, as professional services contract has not apparently been generated. are approved. The inclusion of the project in the urban renewal bond assures needed funding would be provided, as lack of funding was identified during the hearing on the Basalt Creek Comprehensive Plan hearing, and as to why a stormwater plan had not been developed. After Jonathan noted the Basalt Creek plan had a selection dedicated to Goal 5, Grace responded, the concept plan was adopted in 2018. The City of Tualatin Basalt Creek Comprehensive Plan, including the concept plan as an attachment, but the city adopted the Basalt Creek Comprehensive Plan in 2019. Included as part of the adoption process were the city maps 72-1 and 72-3, which are the city's natural resources maps, which were integrated into the city's governing documents and do not indicate most of the Goal 5 resources within these maps, as shown during the proposal presentation. Grace also added that all land use actions within the Basalt Creek area have to be identify compliance to Goal 5. Having clearly identified a Goal 5 inventory for the Basalt Creek area will assist the city and developers in future land use actions in helping protect and conserving the various natural resources known to exist in the Basalt Creek area, but not identified on city maps. And on the last one was, after it said, Elaine Howard asked if the task force if they agree or are in agreement with the proposed project list provided by the City of Tualatin minus the Basalt Creek Park. It's, and this is my recollection is that, and in my notes, I had questioned if the two proposed projects were included in the question. And what I heard was that the two projects were to be included in the project list. This is consistent with my stated intentions from within the same meeting, including discussions on the inclusion of the projects as separate line items, and which they were acknowledged could be done, in which no objection was presented by a member of the task force.
I am not tracking, and I'm super impressed. You could be an auctioneer. I am not tracking what two projects you're referring to. I'm looking at that paragraph that you're mentioning just prior to item 5 adjournment, but I'm not tracking on the two projects that you are making mention of.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that request for clarification. It was the stormwater management plan for the Basalt Creek area, which is mandated by the state, but has not yet been done by the city for the Basalt Creek area. And the second one was the Goal 5 natural resources inventory, which is also a mandated requirement for the by the state and has not been done for the Basalt Creek area. I believe that they're on the revised project list. They are listed at the bottom as not included.
I think those projects were not included based on concerns that they weren't, well, there was limitations on the amount of funds that you'd be able to generate from the increment, if I recall correctly. And also I think we had concerns if you're talking about the park.
No. Separate
Okay.
from the park. Separate from the park.
I'm not sure. I'm totally tracking. I thought we were talking about projects there. Any
right?
Jonathan?
I'm so sorry.
Oh no. I just want to make sure I'm tracking if we're going to make an amendment to the motion.
If I can clarify again, I made two proposals, and I think that included, as we were just talking about, the slide presentation, the slide deck that I had presented that Jonathan just said that he was not able to include in the minutes. There were two proposals that I had. One was for the development of a stormwater management plan for the Basalt Creek area. And the second one was for the development of a Goal 5 natural resources inventory as required by, both of those are required by state mandate and has not been done yet for the Basalt Creek area by the city.
So Grace, those two projects are listed in the meeting agenda minutes under Grace proposed project number 1 and Grace proposed project number 2. We are having this discussion because noted from the second meeting, our meeting recording stopped at minute 34:37. And then I sent the agenda out with those meeting minutes to ask for comments to help clarify and recollect. And Grace, you incorporated those items via email. And so what we have included in a meeting minutes number 2 are your proposed suggestions.
Recording in progress.
I'm sorry, I'm having, this is crazy. Let's see. Okay, I'm sorry. Gosh darn it. I don't know how to resolve this.
On one of your devices that you're listening to, mute that device. No, the speakers. You don't have to mute the microphone. Just mute one of the speakers.
While she's doing that, and Jonathan, please jump in and help me here, but it is my recollection that Grace recommended those projects, and you had talked about how the city was pursuing those projects under another arm of the city, and that they would fund that RFP that is getting ready to go out, and therefore those projects didn't need to be in the urban renewal plan because they were being funded through other city resources. Is that correct?
That is correct. And so during the project presentation tonight, we have Steve Coker, which is the City of Tualatin's Assistant Community Development Director, talking about the city's approach, because we would like that to be officially recorded as the city's official statement. So the projects that Grace is referring to is the Stormwater Management Plan, which she did propose and are included in the meeting 2 agenda minutes, as well as the Goal 5 resource inventory. Staff did not include those in meeting 3 due to the fact that the City of Tualatin, not the Tualatin Development Commission, is funding that project through the Community Development Department fiscal year 21-22 for $100,000. For all of those questions and concerns regarding the timeline process and the RFP, those questions need to be directed to Kim McMillan, the Community Development Director for the City of Tualatin.
I think I resolved my problems. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can't see me, but you can at least hear me. Thank you. Okay, so
it's very crisp this time.
Okay, thank you. I'm so sorry. Cassandra, I was trying to respond to Cassandra's question as to which 2 projects I was referring to. And so I think, are we clear? Have I responded to Cassandra's issues?
Yes, thank you very much. I just, I wasn't totally tracking. And then when Elaine made that recap, it kind of came back in my mind that what we were referencing. So most helpful, thanks. I didn't want to make any motions or vote on something if I wasn't tracking properly. I appreciate the recap.
So I think I have made my comments as to the second minutes of the 4-8 meeting.
So Grace's comments will be submitted as an additional record to the agenda meeting 2 minutes. If there's no more discussion, then we have a vote.
I think, do we need to make a new motion since there have been amendments to the minutes?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a new motion to adopt the minutes with the additions that Grace has provided to meeting number 2 and meeting number 3.
Are we talking just about 2 or are we talking about both 2 and 3? I'm sorry.
Well, we're just talking about 2 right now.
I'll revise that meeting
Okay.
number 2.
Thank you. Sorry.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
thank you.
Please indicate my voice is my agreement.
Yeah. Next item on the agenda is meeting 3. However, the city believes that in concurrence with the ORS statute as required by the public meetings law, that these are true reflections. So that is our statement regarding meeting 3 minutes. Grace, I know you have proposed suggestions.
Thank you, I do. I see after number 3 on your agenda item for the April 29th, you have included further down below comments which I submitted earlier. I'm not clear, are we discussing those, or are those being included now as the proposal, or do these need to be proposed for inclusion into the minutes?
They need to be proposed for inclusion into the minutes, but just so that the task force members understand that the meeting minutes, we believe, are a true reflection, as well as according to public meeting requirements, they do not have to be a verbatim record of the meeting proceedings, just a general reflection.
May I comment?
You may, but the reason that those are submitted is because Grace would like to make those recommendations.
And I also comment that the public meeting laws also indicate that there should be a true reflection of all topics discussed and those of the participants. So I just like to make that comment as well. How would you like to proceed, Jonathan? Would you like me to make a proposal for the submission of my comments?
Yes, just because they've been submitted to the task force as requested by you, you just have to make a general request that those submissions be included.
I therefore make a request that my submissions be included as part of the minutes of the 4/29 meeting of the public meeting of the task force.
Is there a motion? Or is there a second? Excuse me.
I'll second.
All in favor? Okay.
I'm indicating by verbal agreement. Thank you.
All right. So those minutes will be included as they are currently presented with Grace Lucchini's submissions. All right. The next item on the agenda is the proposed boundary regarding from meeting number 1. And I will share my screen just so everyone has a reference point. Based on the discussions from meeting 1, we have included the community partners for affordable housing parcel. We've also extended the right-of-way to include the frontage road of that as well. Just to line up, I've spoken with Elaine, the parcel alignments won't make that big of a difference. And so the parcel alignment adjustments will be here. Can you see my pointer mouse? They will be here, here. And when I say partial adjustments, it just means these will be congruent with the property tax lots that our system was outdated compared to the AKS who's doing the legal lot lines. And right here.
And those adjustments were done as we started working with the firm to do the legal description, and they were identifying the tax lots and identified that the 2 GIS systems didn't have the same information. So we're using the most up-to-date GIS system information that will work with what the county assessor has. So it's just cleaning up tax lot data.
And Elaine, tell them that usually the assessor doesn't like split parcels. So we're doing this to help everyone out.
Right. because it makes them have to figure out the different values and put them in different tax code areas. So we try really hard to not make them split tax parts. So.
All right. Is there a motion to accept this boundary?
I move to accept the boundaries as stated.
Second.
Okay.
Stop.
Before we vote, I have a question
Yep.
or a statement rather, just for the record, that I work for Community Partners for Affordable Housing, and our property that's currently under development has been included in the URA. And so just to avoid any appearance of conflict of interest, I want to go ahead and state that, but also state that I make no personal gain on the development or not development of that property. It doesn't affect my personal income. And therefore, by conflict of interest rules, I am not conflicted out from this vote. But I just want to put that on the record for future reference.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 I don't know if I was unmuted there.
All right. The next item on the agenda is the City of Tualatin identified projects. These projects have been identified in key areas such as transportation, sewer, developer assistance incentives, small business grants, acquisition and disposition, and administration. The projects that you are seeing tonight is the exact way that they are presented in the project plan document. And so we wanted to present to you the formal project plan as presented in the plan document. Before we begin, I have Steve Coper from the City of Tualatin to talk about the two proposed projects that Ms. Lucchini has proposed, the Stormwater Management Plan and the Goal 5 Inventory. As noted earlier, the Stormwater Management Plan is not included as the city proposed projects due to the fact that $100,000 has been allocated from the general fund of the City of Tualatin to this endeavor. Therefore, as the Tualatin Development Commission feels that the $100,000 that is being required could be better utilized in other projects in this project list. Steve, I will allow you to share.
Thanks, Jonathan. So I don't have anything to add specifically to the stormwater piece. So thanks for your statements on that. I did have just a short presentation, and I'll try to go through it pretty quickly as it looks like we're kind of nearing the end of our time. On the Goal 5 piece, just so all of the members here are aware of kind of how, so can you try again on the screen share, Jonathan? Just so that all the members are aware of how the city deals with satisfying its obligations under Goal 5. And so just by way of a little bit of background, I know not all of you are kind of technically aware of what a goal is necessarily. Goal 5 is one of the 19 statewide planning goals. They came out of the statewide planning regime, which started in 1973 and 1974, and is considered pretty groundbreaking in the rest of the country. And so the goals themselves are just policy statements. And then in order to fulfill the policy statements from each of the 19 statewide planning goals, there are sets of different, what are called administrative rules. And so the rules actually specify how cities and counties across Oregon are required, what they're required to do to comply with the various statewide planning goals. Specific to Tualatin and other cities that are in the Portland metropolitan urban growth boundary area, there's also a metro functional plan, which has either some additional requirements in how the metro government sees cities and counties and its purview complying with the statewide planning goals. And in some cases, those metro functional rules actually supplant or replace the administrative rules. And so a couple of examples there that some of the statewide planning goals, Goal 10, which relates to housing, has some specific metro rules on how cities satisfy Goal 10 rather than administrative rules. And Goal 5 is also one of those goals. And then the last point I'll just make quickly is that then local comprehensive plans, which are the city's policy statement for how it wants to see land use and growth and transportation occur within its boundaries are required to comply with those 3 other items in the hierarchy: the statewide planning goals, administrative rules, and the metro functional plan. And then finally, its development code, which is specifically how development carries out those vision statements at the local level, is required to comply with its local comprehensive plan. So specific to goal 5, what is goal 5? The bolded sentence says it pretty well. Its goal is to protect natural resources, conserve scenic and historic areas and open spaces. I think it's actually probably one of the goals that's most central to the Oregon statewide planning program and is obviously highly laudable. There's some other verbiage on this slide that just kind of talks about some other guidance on how local governments should implement goal 5. But they're not specifically kind of binding, they're more directory. So generally speaking, there is an administrative rule for goal 5. And so the administrative rule itself has a couple of different processes. The 2 main ones I've highlighted on this slide. The default process, which some of you may have heard commentary about, is in order to meet goal 5 resources, which include natural resources, they also include historic resources and some other resources. For example, surface mining is one of those goal 5 resources, which sounds a little counterintuitive. And so the city is required to adopt a list of significant natural resource sites in its comprehensive plan or in its development code. However, in 1996, the administrative rule was amended to add a metro process to it. And so basically what it says here is that it sort of foresaw that Metro was trying to create its own regime for cities and counties within the UGB to comply with Goal 5 separate from the inventory process. And so the rule basically spoke to, once Metro was done with that rulemaking, that rule would apply rather than the traditional default process of inventorying resources. And so just briefly, Metro's process for complying with Goal 5, which the first part of which was adopted in 1996, right after those changes were made to the Oregon Administrative Rule, was called Title 13 of Metro's, they call it the Regional Functional Plan, but we just call them Metro Rules. And it came up with this term called Water Quality Resources Areas. And so basically what water quality resources areas are is they're a combination of creeks and streams, and then vegetated corridors that are adjacent to those. So they're basically protected areas where development is prohibited for the most part, with some limited exceptions, water dependent uses, and then development is allowed to certain extents in exchange for mitigating the intrusion into the vegetated corridor. And there's a pretty formulaic way in the Metro Code that those are set up, which is based on the percent slope of the stream bank or creek bank next to it. And they dictate usually between 25 foot and 100 feet, kind of at the most extreme for a stream or creek, vegetated corridor on either side of that water quality resource. Then in 2005, Metro had decided that they wanted to supplement Goal 3, and they added Title 13, which is known as Nature and Neighborhoods, and it created, kind of similar to the water quality resource areas, it created a term called habitat conservation areas. And so these basically were either an extension or in many cases contiguous with the vegetated corridor area. And so they're kind of slightly enhanced protected areas alongside of—
John, you have to ready.
And so again, kind of similarly, development is protected, the areas are protected from development with, again, some of the similar exceptions for water dependent uses. And then there's obviously a regime where certain amounts of development are accepted in exchange for mitigating. And so mitigating basically means that the developer would be required to enhance degraded areas of the vegetated corridor. So where there's erosion or a lack of plantings, the developer would plant small plantings in order to enhance that area. And then lastly, how does Tualatin comply? So we've seen the various regimes. And so prior to Metro Title 3 primarily, and as well as 13. Tualatin had a significant natural resources inventory, and so it was based on sites identified in a natural resource and local wetlands inventory that Tualatin did in 1995, just prior to the change in the way in which Metro decided to regulate compliance with Goal 3. And so post Title 13, Clean Water Services, which is the, among many things, the stormwater authority for the Metro region. And so in Chapter 13 of its design and construction standards, and those apply to Tualatin, and we have to abide by them. It's not optional. And so they're implemented by Clean Water Services as well. They provide standards that apply to sensitive areas and vegetated corridors, which protect these areas from development to comply with Title 3. And so their regime is fairly similar to the model code that's in Metro's Title 3. And so if you look in that Chapter 13 of their design and construction standards, they have the same thing. They have basically a percentage slope of bank next to the water resource, and then depending on whether it's a perennial or annual stream and so forth, various characteristics of it, that dictates how large the vegetated corridor and buffer is from that resource and how much of it would be protected. Last note on that point is that all development activity has to submit a pre-screen to Clean Water Services. So even if there's not the presence of a water resource or sensitive area on it, a development has to submit anyway, and then Clean Water Services looks at it and looks for the presence of potential resources. And if there are some, then they have to go further and beyond that. And if the pre-screen shows there are none, then they're allowed to proceed. And as part of Tualatin's development process, we require the applicant to submit proof that they've gone through this process to us as part of the process. And then last point, and I'll try to keep it brief because again, I know we're kind of short on time. Post Title 13, Tualatin and then 8 other cities in Washington County, as well as the county itself and Clean Water Services, banded together and formed what's known as the Tualatin Basin Plan. And so that plan uses Clean Water Services' existing Title 3 protection standards found in that Chapter 3 of its design and construction standards. And then it committed to expansion of a capital program to support restoration and volunteer activities. And so basically all of those things together, because Clean Water Services Chapter 3 of the design and construction standards were considered to be slightly more restrictive than Title 13, and then combined with the commitment to supporting the restoration of degraded areas through future activities, Metro deemed that plan to be in compliance with Title 13. And so in order to satisfy Goal 5, basically, we just follow the Clean Water Services design and construction standards, and an applicant goes through that process. And so that in a nutshell is how the city of Tualatin and a couple other cities in the Washington County area as well comply with Goal 5 going forward. So I'll end the screen share just so we can see each other all again. But with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you folks may have.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
Yes.
This information was very helpful and would have been very helpful to have been presented to the task force when we were discussing the projects. As it is, this is after the fact of our discussions and outside of the discussions. So it's very important information to hear, but it is not. It is outside the process by which a public meeting should be conducted. And I would like to also make a comment that I would like to have a statement included within the recommendations for the projects to be submitted to the TD the Tualatin Development Commission. And I can read them to you. I can also provide them in written form.
Would you provide those in written form, Grace?
Alrighty, may I just summarize them for you?
Yes, ma'am.
I think that the two proposals that I made are beneficial to the city, Basalt Creek citizens, Basalt Creek property owners, developers in the Basalt Creek area, the environment, natural resources, and ultimately and consequently a benefit to the public at large. I would like to state and have included as part of the record and included as part of any statement presented as the recommendations generated by the task force. I'm requesting that the task force to include within the project list the recommendations that it is my contention these two projects, if included, that the two projects presented to the task force on 4/8/21, these two proposals were presented with supporting documentation and included the needs, including compliance with state mandates, anticipated outcomes if implemented, and benefits to the economy and success of the proposed bond. The proposals were discussed and included within the minutes of the meeting was that Grace asked if two projects could be included in this urban renewal plan moving forward. Eileen Howard answered in the affirmative. Grace asked if the projects are approved and to be included within the list, and they would be identified as individual line items like the current projects. Eileen Howard answered in the affirmative. To again summarize, there is additional information, but it is after the 8/4/21 discussions, there was no action submitted by a member of the task force to include to exclude the proposals from the projects list. The action taken by the city between 4/8 meeting and the 4/29 meeting were outside the daylight of a public meeting. It is my contention that the Tualatin Development Commission gave the task force the authority and the direction to identify and recommend projects to the TDC. As a governing body making recommendations to the development committee, the task force has the responsibilities to perform their task to make the informed decisions during public meeting. If the city did not agree with the actions being taken by the task force, it was this, when the task force was conducting the business, which the TDC specifically directed the task force to perform the task, the staff has established alternative actions which they could have taken. If the city staff did not agree with the projects, the task force the task force was considering, the staff could have presented it to the meeting, as Steve just did now, the information which the task force could have deliberated upon and made their decisions as to the merits of the staff's concerns, and then voted upon them. The staff could also, the city could also allow the task force to conduct their business as assigned by the TDC the TDC. This option would have provided and allowed the TDC to perform their role as a decision-making body to obtain multiple channels of information, including citizen involvement within the process, which the City Council and the TDC specifically identified as a goal for the Urban Renewal District Task Force. It could have provided the TDC, the decision-making body, the role and the responsibility to determine which projects had merit and should be included in the task and the projects list. The actions of the city staff removing the two proposed projects from consideration of the projects list outside the public process usurped the role and purpose, functions, and the public bodies of the task force and the TDC. I will submit the entire written form, but that is a summary of my concerns, and which I would like to have included with any recommendations on the projects for the proposed bond.
So let me clarify something real quick. This is not a bond. This is a tax increment financing model. So I want to be very clear to the public at large. This does not require a public vote. So this is not a bond. Secondly, the task force was tasked with to review and recommend projects. It was never the intention that the final recommendation is not until August 9th. So there could also be changes between now and then regarding any kind of consult and confer with our fellow taxing districts, as well as the public involvement process, which occurs starting tomorrow. So I want to be very clear that no final project list has been determined at any time. There are proposed projects listed in the draft plan based on the recommendations of this group, as well as the determination of staff. Elaine?
Since my name was quoted, I wanted to clarify a couple of things also. I believe I said those projects could be eligible projects in an urban renewal plan. That type of activity could be funded by urban renewal funds. I do not believe I said they are projects in this plan. And I think that clarification is really important. So I believe I was asked, can you use TIF funding for this kind of activity? And my answer was yes.
I'm sorry, and thank you for that clarification. I was just reading exactly verbatim the notes from the minutes that as they were presented in the submissions that Jonathan provided today.
Okay,
I was just
make that clear.
May I weigh in on this, Jonathan?
Yes.
So I don't have an opinion on the process or consideration, but I felt Steve's presentation was most helpful. What that tells me is that the city of Tualatin has already been conducting the type of review that is appropriate in the scheme of development plans, and also has requirement processes in place when development occurs to ensure compliance with those plans. And it sounds like the city also has the intent to fund those planning processes outside of tax increment funds from an overlapping taxing district that will forego revenue as long as this plan is alive. Our feeling is that the projects need to be, the projects funded by tax increment financing need to directly invite private investment. You know, those revenues that we forego are monies that we would otherwise be spending on public safety. And so spending the limited monies that will exist within this tax increment financing plan, we feel should be focused on projects versus studies that sound like they're already taking place or will be taking place in the city's plan. So while I know we're not voting on those because they're not in our project list, we're voting on the previously identified proposed projects in the list. I just wanted to share kind of my perspective as it relates to the types of projects that the plan would include. And the current list of projects that have been identified with the sewer, et cetera, those kind of conform to what, at least for Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue's policymakers, fit with an appropriate use of tax increment funds. So.
I would like to just add a comment that I appreciate those comments, and they were not expressed during the meeting on 4/8. It would have been helpful to have had those comments specifically presented so that there could have been a further discussion and comments made and for a truly informed decision-making by this body.
So the current agenda item are the proposed projects as presented by city staff. There are currently, I think Grace has made the amendment to the plan to include the 2 proposed projects. So there's 2 questions before this task force. One is, does this task force wish to officially recommend the 2 proposed projects by Ms. Lucchini? And then finally, the question will be, if yes or no, does the task force recommend the following projects to be considered in this plan document? Is that correct, Grace?
I will, it sounds very reasonable. Thank you.
Okay, so the first question is, does this task force wish to include the 2 proposed projects, the stormwater management plan and the Goal 5 inventory, into the proposed project list? Is there a motion?
I make such a motion.
Is there a second? Seeing none, that proposal does not be included into the proposed project list. Is there a motion to accept the proposed project list as provided by city staff tonight?
I'll make a motion to accept the proposed project list that staff has presented this evening.
Is there a second? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Yay, here.
The proposed projects are passed by this task force. I want to be very clear though, last night, the Tualatin Development Commission saw the 2 proposed projects by Grace Lucchini in the staff report as citizen proposed projects. It is the position of the Tualatin Development Commission that if these are continued proposed projects, you may advocate those during the public involvement process as well if you feel those need to be included into this project. So this is not the end of the road if you feel the need to advocate that these proposed projects should be included.
Thank you for that comment and that information. I again request that if it's that my comments that I referred to earlier, that I would like to have those included with any recommendations being made regarding the projects list as a dissenting vote.
That will be accepted.
Thank you very much.
So the next steps are beginning on July 1st. There is a virtual open house for this district. It will be virtual. It will be housed on the tualatonoregon.gov under the Urban Renewal banner. It will provide a link, kind of stations like the Sherwood model did, which is the plan proposal, the plan document, what is urban renewal, citizen comment, citizen proposal, etc. Starting tomorrow is the official consult and confer, the 45-day window with our fellow taxing districts. They will be receiving a letter tomorrow morning, along with the links to the appropriate tax documents and a plan and the report accompanying. We also anticipate continuing these public conversations with our citizen involvement organizations over the next month, as well as the Tualatin Chamber of Commerce and any public individual who wishes to speak with me, Cheryl, the city manager, or our Tualatin Development Commission.
Question about the open house. You said it's virtual, so does that mean it's not live? So you can like kind of sign in and do it anytime? Or is it at a specific time on the 1st?
No, I'm sorry. It'll be July 1st through the 30th, and you can do it at your leisurely pace.
Great. I'm happy to share that with my fellow developers. That's great.
Awesome.
I'm sorry. We have a personal emergency going on in our household right now. I have to leave this meeting. I apologize profusely. We have not to be too much public information. We have a dog has to be euthanized right now.
Oh.
So I'm so sorry that I have to leave this meeting, and I do apologize. It's been a pleasure and an honor to have been able to participate. I'm sorry I have to leave. Excuse me, and thank you very much for the honor or the ability to participate. I will send my copy of that later on this evening. Thank you.
So we'll keep her in our thoughts, especially when it comes to a puppy. If there is nothing else or are there any comments, I think that the meeting can be adjourned. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? All right. Thank you so much
Thank
for your
you.
time and commitment to this.
Have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.